The red alert siren screamed across New Pyongyang Colony as Captain Do-hyun Park stood in the command center, watching the tactical display with cold eyes. 47 warships hung in orbit above Baekdu 7 like vultures waiting for something to die. They belonged to the Vrax Empire, and they had come with a simple message: surrender or be destroyed. Lieutenant Ji-woo Kim stood beside Do-hyun, her fingers dancing across the control panel as she counted their assets. One orbital defense station with minimum power. 600 people who knew how to hold a rifle. 4,000 colonists who depended on those 600 to keep them alive. The numbers look bad no matter how she counted them. "The transmission is coming through again, Captain," said So-min Kwan from the communication station. Her voice stayed steady even though her hands shook slightly on the controls. The main screen flickered to life. Commander Throck of the Vrax filled the display, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence as his translator device turned his words into human language. "Humans of New Pyongyang, this is your final warning. You have 6 hours to surrender your colony. Disable your weapons. Gather in the central plaza. Resistance will result in complete orbital bombardment. 14 systems have fallen before you. All chose survival. Choose wisely." The screen went dark. Do-hyun turned to face the room. Sergeant Min-ho Choi leaned against the wall near the weapons locker, cleaning his rifle with practiced movements. Dr. Yuna Lee stood by the medical readiness board, her face showing the weariness of someone who had already started planning for casualties. Young Private Ha-jin Seung sat at his station, writing something in the small journal he always carried. "Call the council," Do-hyun said quietly. "Everyone with rank or responsibility. We have a decision to make." Within 20 minutes, the command center filled with people. Mining supervisors stood next to military officers. Teachers gathered with engineers. Borahan, who ran the explosive teams in the mines, wiped dust from her hands as she entered. Taeyang, their last fighter pilot, limped in with a bandaged leg from a training accident. Do-hyun waited until everyone settled, then spoke. "You all heard the ultimatum. The Vrax want us to surrender. They promise we will live if we comply." He paused, letting the words hang in the air. "I have intelligence that says otherwise." He pulled up data on the main screen. Images of other colonies. Other worlds that had surrendered to the Vrax advance. 3 months ago, the Vrax hit the Meridian system. Population of 8,000. They surrendered immediately. 2 weeks later, our scouts found the colony empty. No bodies, no survivors. Just empty buildings. More images appeared. New Shanghai, surrendered. Population gone. Terra Verde, surrendered. Population gone. The pattern repeats across 14 systems. The Vrax do not take prisoners. They take slaves, workers, or they take nothing at all because everyone is dead. The room erupted in angry voices. Someone shouted about fighting. Another voice called for evacuation. A third suggested negotiation. Ji-woo stepped forward, and the room quieted. "I have a plan," she said, her young face serious. "It is dangerous. Many of us will die, but some of us might live." She activated the tactical display, showing the planet below. Baekdu 7 has powerful magnetic storms. They interfere with sensors, targeting systems, everything electronic. The storms follow a pattern. In 14 hours, the biggest storm of the season hits our region. Our fingers traced lines on the map. The old mining tunnels run under the entire colony. Miles of them. We can rig them with explosives. We can turn our streets into kill zones. When the Vrax land their troops, we make them pay for every meter of ground. "That is suicide," someone said from the back. "Surrender is also suicide," Do-hyun replied. "Just slower. And on our knees." Min-ho Choi laughed, a dark sound with no humor in it. I have been shooting aliens for 15 years. I would rather die shooting than die begging. Dr. Yunali spoke up, her voice cutting through the tension. I did not leave Earth to practice medicine in the colonies, just so I could watch people die without a fight. I vote we stand. One by one, voices joined in agreement. Not everyone. Some people still argued for surrender, for finding another way, for running. But the majority spoke clearly. They took a vote. 543 to 50-7. They would fight. Dayun looked at Soman. Open a channel to the Vrax's flagship. The screen came alive again. Commander Throck appeared, his translator already active. Have you made your decision, humans? Dohan smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. Behind him, someone in the command center started laughing. Then another. Soon, the whole room filled with laughter, the sound of people who had nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. We have made our decision, Dayan said clearly. Here is our answer. He raised one hand, showing his middle finger extended in the ancient gesture of defiance. Around him, others did the same. Come and take it, Dohyun said. The screen went dark. Minho Choi walked to the weapons locker and started pulling out rifles, checking each one before passing it to waiting hands. The metallic sound of magazines being loaded filled the room. Click, click. Hajin Sung wrote in his journal, his hand steady now. Later, people would read what he wrote that day. They ordered us to surrender. We laughed and reloaded instead. Tomorrow the storm comes. Tomorrow we teach them what it means to fight humans. Dohan watched his people prepare. They had 6 hours before the Vrax's deadline. 6 hours to turn a colony into a fortress. 6 hours to prepare for the fight of their lives. Outside the command center, the magnetic storms gathered on the horizon, painting the sky in colors of green and purple. Inside, humans loaded weapons and made their peace with death. The final stand was about to begin. Commander Throck stared at the blank screen where the human transmission had ended. Around him, his bridge officers stood in confused silence. In 400 years of Vrax's expansion across the galaxy, no prey species had ever responded with laughter. No conquered race had ever chosen certain death over the mercy of surrender. They are insane, his tactical officer said quietly. They are human, Throck replied, accessing his database on this strange species. The file was thin. Humans were new to the galactic stage. Young, aggressive, unpredictable. Prepare the invasion force. They want to die. We will grant their wish. On the surface of Baekdu 7, New Pyongyang transformed. Dohyun organized his people into teams. Every person with military experience became a squad leader. Every person who could hold a weapon became a soldier. Marahan gathered her mining crew in the tunnels beneath the colony. She had spent 10 years blasting through rock to find rare minerals. Now she would use those same skills to bury Vrax soldiers. Her team moved through the dark passages, placing charges at support columns and key junctions. How much explosive do we have? Asked one of her crew. Bora smiled grimly. Enough to drop the entire underground onto their heads. We just need them to go where we want them. Above ground, Jiwoo worked with the defense teams to create firing positions. They tore up streets to make barriers. They reinforced buildings to create strong points. Every window became a sniper position. Every doorway became a choke point. Private Hajin Sung carried ammunition crates with other young soldiers. His body ached from the work, but he did not complain. Around him, people twice his age worked just as hard. An old woman who taught school on the colony now assembled rifle magazines with steady hands. A teenage boy who fixed farming equipment now helped install improvised explosive devices along the main roads. In the medical center, Dr. Yuna Lee prepared for the worst. She organized her supplies and briefed volunteer medics. When the fighting starts, we will have more wounded than we can treat. Do the best you can. Save those who have the best chance. It sounds cruel, but it keeps more people alive. One of the volunteers, a young nurse named Kyung-an, nodded understanding. She had 3 children in the shelters below. Everything she did now was to buy them more time to live. So Kwan worked at her communication station, her equipment aimed at the Rax fleet. She could not break their encryption, but she could listen to their signal traffic. What she heard made her call Jiwoo immediately. "Lieutenant, you need to hear this." Jiwoo listened to the translated Rax communications. Their invasion plan assumed minimum resistance. They expected humans to break quickly, to scatter and hide. The Rax had rigid tactics built on centuries of easy conquests. "They have never fought anyone who fought back hard," Jiwoo said slowly. "They do not have backup plans for real resistance." "Can we use that?" Someone asked. "Yes, we make them react instead of act. We hit them where they do not expect. We do what their tactics say we should not do." Jiwoo pulled up the tactical map. "They will land here at the main spaceport because it is the logical place. So we let them land. Then we kill them." In the armory, Sergeant Minho Choi trained civilians in basic combat. He kept his lessons simple because complex tactics required time they did not have. "You point this end at the enemy. You pull this trigger. The enemy falls down." "Questions?" A farmer raised his hand. "What if I miss?" "Then you shoot again. And again. Until you hit or until you are dead. This is not complicated." Minho loaded a rifle and demonstrated. "See? Even a child can do this." "You are all smarter than children." "I hope." His dark humor got some nervous laughs. Good. People who could still laugh could still fight. Taeyang worked on the last functional defense fighter in the hangar. The mechanic said it was not flight ready. Taeyang disagreed. He had flown worse machines in worse conditions. "It does not need to fly pretty," he told his ground crew. "It only needs to fly once." They understood. This would be a one-way trip. Taeyang planned to hit one of the Vrax cruisers hard enough to hurt them, to show them humans could strike back even from a position of weakness. As night fell over New Pyongyang, Do-hyun walked through the colony. He checked defensive positions and spoke with his people. Many of them had stories. Reasons to fight. Borahan told him about her daughter, killed in a pirate raid 5 years ago. "I could not save her, but I can make these aliens pay." Dr. Yunali spoke of a colony she had worked on before, overrun by raiders. She had hidden in a medical locker while people died outside. "I swore I would never hide again. Never let evil win without fighting it." Minho Choi just shrugged when asked. "I am good at shooting things. Might as well shoot things that deserve it." Young Hajin wrote all of it in his journal. The stories. The preparations. The feeling in the air as everyone prepared to face death together. The magnetic storms rolled closer, painting the night sky with streams of green and purple light. The reading showed the big storm would hit in 10 hours. Perfect timing. In orbit, Commander Throck watched the same storms on his sensors. They would interfere with orbital support, but his ground troops would not need it. 10,000 Vrax soldiers against 600 humans. The mathematics were simple. What Throck did not understand, what he could not understand, was the human factor. The part of the equation that did not care about mathematics. The part that laughed at death and loaded weapons anyway. Do-hyun stood in the command center as the final preparations finished. Jiwoo gave him the readiness report. All positions manned. All traps set. All tunnels rigged. "How long do you think we can hold?" she asked quietly. Do-hyun looked at the tactical display, at the impossible odds. "Long enough to hurt them. Long enough to show them we were here. Long enough to matter." "That is a good answer," Jiwoo said. Minho Choi appeared with cups of coffee, his last humor before the storm. Drink up. Tomorrow we show aliens why humans are the galaxy's new nightmare. They drank in silence, watching the storms come closer, waiting for the wracks to descend. The magnetic storm hit New Pyongyang at dawn, turning the sky into a nightmare of green and purple lightning. The wracks invasion force descended through the chaos, their dropships barely visible through the electromagnetic interference. Commander Throck had sent 10,000 soldiers to crush 600 defenders. He expected it to be over by lunch. He was wrong. The first wracks dropships landed at the main spaceport exactly where Jiwoo predicted they would. The alien soldiers emerged in perfect formation, their weapons ready, their tactics following the doctrine that had won them 14 systems. They advanced into the colony in organized columns, scanning for resistance. They found it. Sergeant Minho Choi watched from his position on the third floor of what used to be a school building. He counted 200 wrack soldiers marching down the main street like they owned it. He smiled without humor. All positions, he said into his communicator. Wait for it. Wait for it. The wrack's column reached the center of the kill zone. Buildings surrounded them on all sides. The trap was perfect. Now, windows exploded with gunfire from every direction. The wrack soldiers stumbled in surprise as bullets tore through their ranks. They tried to return fire, but they could not see their attackers through the storm's interference. Their advanced targeting systems were useless in the magnetic chaos. Minho fired controlled bursts from his rifle, dropping one wracks after another. Welcome to Earth's backyard, he shouted, laughing as he reloaded. Hope you enjoy your stay. Around the colony, similar ambushes erupted. The wracks had divided their forces to take the colony quickly. Instead, they found themselves trapped in a city that fought back from every shadow dot in the tunnels below. Lorahan tracked wracks' movements through seismic sensors. A large group of enemy soldiers had entered the old mining complex, probably trying to use it to move under the human defenses. She waited until they were deep inside, then triggered her first sequence. The explosions rippled through the underground like thunder from hell. Support beams collapsed. Ceilings fell. Entire sections of tunnel became tombs for wrack soldiers who had no time to even scream. Bora watched her monitors as the seismic readings showed devastation. First batch baked, she reported to command. Approximately 300 enemy casualties. Above ground, Wu Jinnam had found his perfect killing spot in the colony's communications tower. He was a quiet man who had worked as a surveyor before the war. Now he worked as death from above. His rifle was old but reliable. His eyes were sharp. His patience was endless. Through his scope, he watched Rax officers trying to coordinate their scattered forces. He exhaled slowly and squeezed the trigger. The officer fell. The Rax soldiers around him panicked, looking for the shooter. By the time they looked up at the tower, Woojin had already moved to another window and killed another. Officer 16-year-old Yoonji Lim had not been supposed to fight. She was supposed to stay in the shelters with the other children. But when she saw a damaged Rax combat walker sitting in the street, its crew dead from Minho's ambush, she could not resist. She had grown up fixing mining equipment and farming machines. How different could alien technology be? Very different, as it turned out. But Yoonji was smart and stubborn. She spent 2 hours inside the walker, figuring out its controls through trial and error. When she finally got it moving, she piloted it straight into a group of Rack soldiers trying to set up a command post. The look on their faces when their own walker opened fire on them would have been funny if the situation was not so deadly. Dr. Yuna Lee worked in hell. Her medical center had become a processing line for the wounded. People came in bleeding, screaming, dying. She and her team did what they could, working with steady hands even as explosions shook the building. "Another one," a medic called out. Yuna moved to the new patient, a young soldier with shrapnel in his chest. She worked quickly, her hands knowing what to do from decades of experience. "You are going to live," she told him firmly. "I did not save you from Earth diseases just to let aliens kill you. Now hold still." The soldier lived. Not everyone did. By noon, the casualty reports came in. 241 human defenders dead. But the Vraks had lost nearly 3,000 soldiers. Their perfect formations had broken against human determination. Their superior technology had failed against human stubbornness and the magnetic storms that turned their sensors useless. Commander Throck watched from orbit in growing frustration. His troops should have taken the colony in hours. Instead, they were dying in the streets, in the tunnels, in kill zones, an ambush that seemed to spring from nowhere. The humans fought like demons, giving no ground without making the Vraks pay in blood. "How is this possible?" his tactical officer asked. "They are so few. They should have broken by now." Throck did not answer because he did not understand it himself. Every other species they had conquered had shown reason. They had calculated odds and chosen survival when defeat became inevitable. But humans did not seem to care about the odds. They fought as if winning was the only option they could see. In the colony command center, Do-hyun coordinated his forces with Ji-woo. They moved defenders from quiet sectors to reinforce positions under pressure. They triggered Boris tunnel explosives when Vrak soldiers tried to use the underground. They adapted constantly because the Vraks did not. "They are still following their plan," Ji-woo observed, "even though it is clearly not working. They cannot adapt fast enough." "Then we keep doing what they do not expect," Do-hyun replied. He looked exhausted, but his eyes stayed sharp. "How much ammunition do we have left?" "Enough, or maybe 2 more days of fighting like this. Then we switch to knives." Do-hyun nodded. "Then we have 2 days to hurt them so badly they never forget us." On the 3rd day of fighting, Commander Throck made his decision. He had lost nearly 6,000 soldiers trying to take a single colony. This was unacceptable. He ordered all remaining forces to concentrate for one massive push. 10,000 soldiers had landed. 4,000 remained combat-ready. He would throw them all at the human center of resistance and crush it through sheer weight of numbers. In New Pyongyang, the defenders saw the Vraks' forces gathering. They knew what was coming. One final assault. Everything the enemy had left. Minho Choi checked his ammunition. 12 magazines left. "Well," he said to no one in particular, "this should be interesting." Woo Jin-nam counted his remaining bullets. 37 rounds. 37 more chances to kill. Yoon Ji-lim coaxed the stolen Vraks walker back to the defensive lines. The machine was barely functional, held together by her repairs and stubborn hope, but it could still shoot. Ha-jin soon wrote in his journal as the storm clouds gathered, both above and around the colony. "Day 3. They are coming again. All of them this time. We are ready. As ready as dead people can be." Dr. Yuna Lee looked at her dwindling supplies and made calculations no doctor should have to make. Who could she save when the next wave of wounded came? Who would she have to let die because there was not enough of anything anymore? Do-hyun stood on the command center roof, watching the Vraks' forces gather in the distance. The magnetic storm still raged overhead, making everything hotter for both sides. He thought about his family, dead now for 10 years, killed by raiders from unknown space. He thought about every person in the colony who trusted him to lead them. He had led them to the edge of extinction, but they had made the enemy pay. They had shown the galaxy that humans did not surrender, that humanity was not prey. "Here they come," Ji-woo said beside him. The Vraks' army began its final advance. The Vraks came like a tide of death, 4,000 soldiers advancing in coordinated waves. Commander Throck had abandoned subtlety. He wanted New Pyongyang crushed, and he wanted it done now. The cost in Vrak's lives no longer mattered. Pride and rage had replaced tactical thinking. The human outer defenses held for 40 minutes. Then they broke. Hyung-an commanded a militia position at the old school on the eastern edge of the colony. She had been a teacher before the war, teaching children their numbers and letters. Now she taught the Vraks about human courage. Her militia was made up of shopkeepers, farmers, and office workers. People who had never held guns before last week. They fought anyway. Fall back to second position. Kyung shouted as Vrak soldiers overwhelmed their barricade. Her militia retreated through the school building, firing as they went. They had evacuated the children days ago through the tunnels. Now the empty classrooms became battlegrounds. Kyung's single quotes S group made it to the second floor and blocked the stairs with furniture. They held there for 20 more minutes before the Vraks broke through. She died with a rifle in her hands and 17 empty magazines at her feet. Her last act was to detonate the charges Bora had placed in the school's foundation. The building collapsed, taking 50 Vrak soldiers with it. On the western front, Taeyang-o flew his patched-together fighter through the magnetic storm. He had already made one successful attack run on a Vrak's landing zone, destroying 2 dropships before they could unload reinforcements. Now he came back for a second pass. His targeting systems flickered and failed in the storm. He switched to manual control, flying by instinct and experience. He saw a group of Vrak's combat walkers advancing on human positions and dove toward them, his guns blazing. 3 walkers exploded before the others could react. Then his fighter took a hit. The left engine exploded into flames. Taeyang fought the controls, trying to reach friendly territory, but the fighter had other ideas. It spun toward the ground, trailing smoke and fire. Taeyang ejected at the last second. His seat rocketed clear just before the fighter slammed into a Vrak's ammunition depot. The explosion lit up the morning sky like a second sun dot in the tunnels. Borahan had one more job to do. The Vraks had learned about the explosives, but they still needed to use the underground to avoid human fire from above. Nearly 3,000 enemy soldiers had entered the tunnel complex, trying to reach the colony's center by the underground route. Bora looked at her detonator. She had rigged the entire tunnel system over 3 days of careful work. 1 button. That was all it took. She thought about calling Do-hyun first, letting him know she was about to collapse the underground. But she did not want him to order her out. Someone had to stay to make sure the detonation happened at the right moment. She checked her sensors one last time. The Vraks were in position. All of them. Right where she wanted them. "Sorry, I cannot make dinner tonight," she said to herself, thinking of the meal she had planned to cook after all this was over. Then she pressed the button. The tunnels collapsed in a sequence of massive explosions. 3,000 Vrak soldiers died in seconds, buried under tons of rock and earth. The ground above shook like an earthquake. Buildings swayed. People stumbled. And then it was over. Borahan died doing what she did best. Moving earth. The collapse of the tunnels took the heart out of the Vrak's assault. Their forces were cut in half, separated by the destruction. But they kept coming anyway, because Throck had ordered them to win no matter the cost. In the central plaza, Sergeant Minho Choi commanded the defense of the armory. This building held what little ammunition the humans had left. Losing it meant losing the war in the next few hours instead of the next few days. Minho had 40 soldiers with him. They faced 300 Vraks pushing hard toward their position. The mathematics were bad, but Minho had never been good at math anyway. "Hold the line!" he shouted, firing controlled bursts at the advancing enemy. "Make every shot count." The Vraks came in waves. The humans shot them down in waves. Bodies piled up in the plaza. The pavement ran red with blood from both species. Still the Vraks came. Still the humans held. Then Minho took a round through the shoulder. Then another through the leg. He dropped to one knee, still firing. Around him, his soldiers fell one by one. The Vraks were at the armory door. Minho looked at the ammunition stacked around him. Thousands of rounds, grenades, explosives, everything the humans needed to keep fighting. The Vraks could not have it. He laughed, that dark laugh that had kept spirits up through impossible days. Told you I would go out with a bang. He pulled every grenade pin he could reach and triggered the demolition charges Bora had placed in the building's foundation. The armory disappeared in an explosion that shattered windows 2 blocks away. 600 Vrak soldiers died in the blast. Minho Choi became a legend in the moment of his death, but now the humans had almost no ammunition left. What they had was scattered across the colony in small caches. Not enough. Not nearly enough. Captain Do-hyun received the casualty reports in the command center. Kyung dead. Bora dead. Minho dead. 287 combat-capable defenders remained out of 600 who had started the fight. Ammunition critically low. Medical supplies nearly gone. The Vrak still had 1,800 soldiers. "We need to consolidate," Jiwoo said quietly. Her tactical display showed the situation clearly. The outer colony was lost. Pull everyone back to the central citadel. Make our last stand there? Do-hyun nodded. It was the only choice left. Give the order. Fighting retreat to the citadel. Everyone who can walk, everyone who can shoot. Across New Pyongyang, the surviving defenders received the order. They fell back through streets they had died to defend, carrying their wounded, leaving their dead. The Vraks followed, pushing hard, sensing victory finally within reach. Woo Jin-nam stayed in his tower position until the last possible moment, covering the retreat. His rifle cracked again and again. Vrak soldiers fell. 62 confirmed kills he had now. Not bad for a surveyor. Then the Vraks found his position. They stormed the tower in overwhelming numbers. Woo Jin fixed his bayonet and met them at the stairs. He killed 3 more before they brought him down. 65 total. Dr. Yuna Lee moved her medical station to the citadel, her team carrying what supplies they could. The wounded came with them, those who could move. Those who could not were given medicine to ease their pain and weapons to make their last stand mean something. Young Ha-jin Soo helped carry ammunition boxes, his journal safely tucked in his jacket. He had documented everything. The heroism, the sacrifice, the cost of defying an empire. If he died, someone might find the journal someday. They would know what happened here. Yoonji Lim drove the stolen Vraks walker through the streets, covering the retreat with the walker's heavy guns until she ran out of ammunition. Then she abandoned it and ran for the citadel on foot, arriving exhausted and covered in soot but alive. By nightfall, the survivors had gathered in the citadel. 1,200 colonists, 287 combat-capable defenders, ammunition for maybe 4 more hours of fighting. Summon Kwan worked her communication station, still listening to Vrak's transmissions. She heard something that made her call Do-hyun immediately. "Captain, the Vrak's fleet command is arguing. Someone to do orbital bombardment. And this quickly. And the others?" Commander Throck refuses. He has requested reinforcements. His pride will not let him bombard us. He wants to take the colony by force. To prove we can be broken. Do-hyun understood. Pride. The same pride that made humans fight impossible odds. The same pride that made Vrak's commanders refuse to admit failure. Pride was going to kill everyone. How long until reinforcements arrive? He asked. 3 days. Maybe 4. Do-hyun looked around the citadel at his exhausted people. Could they hold for 3 days with almost no ammunition? Could they survive 3 more hours? Jiwoo appeared at his side. There is something else. The emergency beacons we have been sending. The distress calls. I have been calculating. If any human ships were in range, if anyone heard us, they could be here in 7 days. We have ammunition for 4 hours, Do-yoon said quietly. I know. They stood together in silence, watching the Vrak's forces gather in the darkness outside, preparing for the final assault. The assault that would come at dawn. Hajin wrote in his journal that night. Day 7 tomorrow. We stopped laughing today. Not from fear, but from exhaustion. Tomorrow we finish this, one way or another. Above them, the magnetic storm continued to rage. And somewhere in the darkness of space, moving faster than light, ships were racing toward Baekdu 7, but they were still very far away. Dawn came to New Pyongyang on the 7th day. The magnetic storm had finally passed, leaving clear skies and perfect visibility. Commander Throk could finally see his enemy clearly. The human citadel stood in the center of the ruined colony, surrounded by the bodies of nearly 9,000 Vrak soldiers. The sight filled him with cold rage. 20-800 Vrak soldiers remained, more than enough to crush the few hundred humans huddled in their last stronghold. Throg had no patience left, no mercy left. He gave a simple order: kill them all. Inside the citadel, Captain Do-hyun walked among his people one last time. 167 could still hold weapons. The rest were too wounded, too exhausted, or too young. But they were all here together. Nobody had run. Nobody had surrendered. We are out of ammunition in maybe 3 hours, Lieutenant Jiwoo reported. She looked like a ghost, her face pale from exhaustion and blood loss from a wound in her side she refused to let stop her. After that, we have knives and improvised weapons. Then we use knives, Do-hyun said simply. He had a cut across his face that had bled down his uniform. He had not slept in 4 days. His body felt like it was held together by nothing but willpower and duty. But his eyes were still clear. Dr. Yuna Lee moved through the wounded, doing what little she could with almost no supplies left. She had run out of painkillers yesterday. She had run out of antibiotics this morning. Now all she had was bandages and hope, and she was running low on both. A young soldier, barely older than Hajin, lay dying from a stomach wound. Yuna held his hand as he struggled to breathe. Am I going to die? He asked. Yes, she said honestly. But you fought well. You bought time for others to live. That matters. He smiled weakly and closed his eyes for the last time. The Vrak's assault began with artillery. Shells rained down on the citadel, shaking its foundations. Then came the soldiers, wave after wave of them, pushing through the outer defenses that the humans had hastily erected. The defenders met them with everything they had left. Rifles cracked. Grenades exploded. For a few hours, the ammunition held out. The Vraks died by the dozens, by the hundreds, but they kept coming. Woojin Nam had survived his tower stand somehow, dragged to the citadel by other defenders. Now he fought again, his rifle speaking death with every shot. When his ammunition ran out, he picked up a Vrak's weapon from a fallen enemy and kept fighting. Yoonji Lim had found an old industrial cutting torch in the citadel basement. She used it like a flamethrower, burning through Vrak soldiers who got too close to her position. The teenager who had fixed farm equipment now wielded fire like a weapon from hell. The ammunition ran out in the 3rd hour, just as Jiwoo had predicted. The sound of gunfire became sporadic, then occasional, then stopped almost completely. The defenders switched to knives, to clubs, to anything they could use as a weapon. The Vraks pushed into the citadel proper. They fought room by room, floor by floor. The humans made them pay for every meter. Captain Do-hyun held the command center entrance with Jiwoo and 12 others. They had fixed bayonets to their empty rifles. When the Vraks came up the stairs, they met them with cold steel and colder determination. Do-hyun killed 3 Vrak soldiers with his bayonet before taking a wound to his chest. He staggered but did not fall. Could not fall. His people needed him standing. Dr. Yuna Lee fired a rifle with one hand while treating a wounded soldier with the other. She had crossed the line from healer to warrior without noticing when it happened. When her rifle ran empty, she picked up a scalpel. It was not much of a weapon, but she knew exactly where to cut to make it count. The Vraks broke through to the final floor. Do-hyun and his remaining defenders stood in a semicircle around the last group of civilians. There was nowhere left to fall back to. This was the end. Ha-jin Seung stood among the defenders, his journal safely sealed in a waterproof case. If they all died here, maybe someone would find it someday. Maybe people would know what happened. That humanity had fought. That they had not gone quietly into the dark. The Vrak soldiers raised their weapons for the final attack. Then the sky turned white. The sound came a second later. A roar like the universe itself was screaming. Do-hyun looked up through a broken window and saw streaks of fire descending from orbit. Not Vrak's fire. Human fire. Combat pods slammed into the ground around the citadel, each one carrying 12 Marines in full combat armor. The pods exploded outward and armed soldiers poured out, their weapons already firing. The Vrak soldiers outside the citadel died in seconds, cut down by precision fire from fresh troops with full ammunition. Above the planet, human warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel. 23 ships led by Admiral Sun Ho-beek, responding to the desperate distress calls that New Pyongyang had been sending for 7 days. They opened fire on the Vrak's fleet immediately. The orbital battle was short and brutal. The Vraks had lost ships to Taiyang's suicide run and to the extended siege. They were exhausted, their crews pushed beyond their limits. The human fleet was fresh, angry, and had just seen what the Vraks had done to the colony below. No mercy was given. No quarter offered in the citadel. Do-hyun watched through blurry eyes as human Marines secured the building. A tall woman in Admiral's uniform entered the command center, flanked by guards. She looked at the defenders, at their bloody weapons and exhausted faces, and stopped. She saluted. Admiral Sun Ho-beek, 9th Fleet. We received your distress call. I'm sorry we could not arrive sooner. Do-hyun tried to salute back, but his wounded arm would not cooperate. Captain Do-hyun Park, New Pyongyang Defense Force. You are right on time, Admiral. Then he collapsed. Dr. Yuna Lee caught him before he hit the ground. The cleanup took 3 days. The Marines swept through the colony, securing what was left. They found 89 defenders still alive, including Do-hyun after emergency surgery. 437 defenders had died. 3,847 colonists had died. But 2,153 survivors lived because those defenders had bought them time. The Vrak's casualties were counted at 8,900 dead, 1,100 captured, including Commander Throck. The Vraks, Empire's worst defeat in 400 years of expansion. The story spread across human space like wildfire. A war correspondent named Heiji Go had arrived with the fleet and broadcast everything. The ruins of New Pyongyang, the bodies of defenders who died at their posts. Ha-jin Seung's journal, recovered and read aloud across 100 worlds. They ordered us to surrender. We laughed, reloaded, and taught them why you never corner humanity. Because when we have nothing left to lose, we have everything to fight for. The siege of New Pyongyang became legend. The colony was rebuilt over the next year, and people came from across human space to walk its streets and remember what had happened there. They built memorials. They carved names into stone. They made sure nobody would ever forget. At the largest memorial, They engraved Sergeant Minho Choi's last words above the list of the dead. Told you I would go out with a bang. Captain Do-hyun Park recovered from his wounds and was promoted to colonel. He refused a desk job and returned to New Pyongyang to command its rebuilt defenses. He would not leave his people. Not again. Dr. Yuna Lee stayed too, rebuilding the medical center. When asked why she did not transfer somewhere safer, she just smiled. This is where I stopped hiding. This is where I learned to fight. This is home. Lieutenant Ji-woo Kim became Captain Kim and took command of the colony's tactical operations. She trained every new defender in the lessons learned during the siege. Be unpredictable. Be stubborn. Be human. Young Ha-jin soon became a writer. His journal was published as 7 Days at New Pyongyang and became required reading in every human military academy. He stayed on the colony and documented its rebuilding, its healing, its refusal to die. Eun Ji-lem grew up to become an engineer, designing new defense systems for frontier colonies. She kept a stolen Vraxwalker in her workshop, a reminder that human creativity could turn enemy weapons against them. The Vrax Empire never attacked human space again. When interrogated, Commander Throck was asked why the Empire had paused its expansion. His answer became famous. They do not fight to win. They fight as if defeat is not an option. They will sacrifice everything rather than submit. Such madness cannot be conquered. Such madness can only be avoided. The galaxy learned a lesson at New Pyongyang. Humanity was not prey. Humanity was not cattle to be herded or resources to be taken. Humanity was something new in the galactic order. Something dangerous. Something that would rather burn than bow. 10 years later, Do-hyun stood at the memorial on the anniversary of the siege. He was older now, his hair going gray, but his eyes were still sharp. New defenders stood at attention around him. Young people who had not been born when the siege happened. People who would defend this colony if another enemy ever came. A child approached him, maybe 8 years old. "Sir, is it true you fought aliens here?" Do-hyun smiled and knelt down to the child's level. "Yes, we fought. Many brave people died so you could stand here today. Were you scared?" "Terrified. Every moment. But we fought anyway, because some things are worth dying for. Freedom, home, the future. Your future." The child nodded seriously, then ran back to her parents.